Hello and welcome to a special finals edition of AFL Trade Talk. We're back after a little layoff, but I'm really excited to be joined by Joel Williams, pro punter from tiptitans.com.au. Very excited. He loves his footy and looking forward to getting stuck into everything trading. But Joel, it's been a massive week one of finals, but an even bigger season. How's the season gone for you so far?
Yeah, it's been an incredible season, Carl, and thanks for having me today. But one of the best that I can remember, just from a viewing perspective, but the way teams have had their peaks and troughs throughout the season, it's really presented an interesting betting season as well.
Any big results for you? Obviously looking at your Twitter and you posting your trading strategies, but what were some of the bigger results for you this year?
Yeah, the trading has been really good for me this year, Carl. We've had a couple of those posts on Twitter I've shared along the way, but as always, we concentrate on nearly all markets in the AFL. Me and my team, we're watching all of the games live, so we're able to mount some positions there. But yeah, overall a great season and starting to build, quite a good premiership market, which hopefully set something exciting up for the last day of the year as well.
Yeah, and an unbelievable finish to the season as well. And just before we get into week one of finals, we'll just recap some of the betting exchange moves and the important notes for those games. But do you think that given the tightness of the season and obviously the top eight could have been, a top 10, top 12, so many contenders vying for those top eight positions. But do you think that makes for better betting? Obviously, there's so many moves that are happening late in the season, but do you think that makes for better betting and potentially trading in those markets?
Well, it does. And I think, probably more so than ever than I can remember, we've seen better sides finish out of the top four. So, it's one of those years where you feel like almost any of the top eight could win it. Whereas in past years, everybody knew really seventh or eighth was going to be a tough slog for those teams. So, until the Bulldogs got knocked off last week by the Hawks, lots of smart people, including myself, thought they could go pretty deep. As such, this season continues to throw curveballs. The Hawks continue on their run, and it, the whole market shifts again. So we've seen, some amazing shifts. I remember seeing, the Lions out at 50-1 for the Premiership, Port Adelaide out to 40-1 into $5 before last week's qualifying final. So, it's been everywhere this year, and it's made for, I think, in a season that really everybody's enjoyed.
And unbelievably, the Hawks traded at $1,000 when they were 0-5 towards the start of the year, and they're now going to a semi-final, potentially a preliminary final, which we're going to talk about. But that's just a ridiculous move, isn't it?
It is. It is. What they're doing is historic. I'm usually one to bet against historic things happening because they are so rare. But we'll dive into that shortly.
We will. Well, let's go over the first game of the finals last week. It was Port versus Geelong. Geelong's biggest pre-play price was $3.70, and Port got to as low as $1.40 in play. We obviously saw Port get absolutely smashed. What did you make of that game?
Yeah, just a complete no-show from the Power. So disappointing for them again. Me personally, knowing their struggles in finals over past years, really thought they'd get this one right going in. They had everything going for them. The Cats, which, there were lots of queries around the Cats and their personnel coming in this final series. I thought they're potentially the weak spot in the top four coming in. And then they lose Tom Stewart in the lead up. So, yeah, Port just failed miserably. A really disappointing performance, and Geelong played their best game of the year. It really was a great game.
Absolutely. And my God, for one of the oldest players in the competition, Patrick Dangerfield was just simply amazing. His effort on the ball was just absolutely incredible, and obviously one of the catalysts for Geelong being so strong in that game. Same as Max Holmes. He's just an A-grader now. But let's talk about the Doggies and the Hawks. We mentioned them before, and the Hawks' good form just continues.
It did, and they beat the Bulldogs at their own game, so they won the contest, and that was always going to be a really important game, similar to Thursday night. in what was going to decide the winner. The Hawks, they beat them first to the ball, and then unlike the Bulldogs have been able to do it to do to every other side all year, the Bulldogs weren't able to take that first possession off the Hawks. The Hawks were too fast, so they got it out of contest really quickly, and then really just were too fast for the Dogs. And what we found is, Bontempelli obviously had a really quiet game, and I was really
Mm.
disappointed with the efforts of guys like Treloar and Liberatore. I thought they didn't step up in Bont's absence, and at the end of the day, I thought the Bulldogs played one of their worst games of the year, and really disappointing for them.
That speed across the ground is just really hard to stop from the Hawks. And yeah, as he said, Marcus Bontempelli had a very quiet night, 18 touches, and he obviously spent some time up forward, but usually is a lot more powerful than that. But the Hawks will face Port Adelaide now in a semi-final, so that'll be exciting. Let's go to probably easily the match of first week of finals. It was Sydney and GWS. Who did you have going into that match at the start?
Yeah, look, I had the Giants at the plus, only very small. I thought this would be a great contest. It was one that I didn't want to back Sydney for the Premiership market before this game because I thought it was a real danger game for them. Look, I thought the Giants really played the perfect game of footy for 3 quarters. I thought they did it so well. How they didn't come out with a win here is gut wrenching for them. Absolutely
Mm.
gut wrenching because now they have a really difficult matchup in the semi-finals. It highlighted this game particularly how good Sydney Stars are, and they're so reliant on those stars again. That being said, for me, throughout the game, it became alarmingly obvious again that their forward line probably isn't what you'd expect of a premiership forward line to be, and their defence probably isn't in the top three either. So, I've still got some queries a lot, for the Swans. But yeah, they find themselves poised perfectly now with a home prelim on, in my view, the soft side of the draw in terms of the semi-final teams.
Yep, agree with you there. Isaac Heaney was unbelievable. That mark sent absolute shivers down my spine, and I really like the comment from Isaac's mum thanking Buckley for just guiding his head to the ground. And yeah, that was actually a nice touch for someone that became a human stepladder. So the final game that we're going to talk about is Carlton and Brisbane up in the Gabba, and Carlton were just so poor in that first 2 quarters, and obviously the fallout from that game is Carlton's inclusions, and then obviously starting Tom De Koning as the sub. I think that is all redundant now. I think Carlton had to, or Michael Voss had to have a crack. But yeah, looks like it was the wrong decision.
Yeah, Sam De Koning as a sub was the obvious one that had people wondering what's going on here. Me and my analysts were messaging each other, just couldn't believe it. That being said, with the other changes, it just shows how desperate Carlton were to just manufacture something that wasn't there, bringing Doherty in. Look, they faced, before I knew who was going to be eighth, when it was going to be Fremantle or Carlton, I said it probably doesn't matter because it was the death sentence, Brisbane at the Gabba finishing fifth. So, Brisbane should have been a top four team if they hadn't given away a few games late to GWS and Collingwood. And I think they're flexing a little bit now and are a team that no team wants to play from here on out.
I think a lot of footy pundits spoke about during the week. Carlton just played to defend and maybe just wanted to have that last crack in the fourth quarter at Brisbane. But, at the end of the day, the margin was just too great. They ended up only winning by 28 points, which easily could have been 60, 70 plus. So you have to give Carlton and probably Tom De Koning a lot of credit there because he was simply magnificent coming onto the ground. But yeah, a very disappointing end of the season, especially for Blues supporters, Joel. Let's talk about the premiership fluctuations after week one of finals, and the big mover was Geelong. Their odds slashed from $9.20 to win the premiership now into $4.40. I'd be really interested to find out what your rated price for them is because yeah, they look like they're on the nice side of the draw. Their implied chance of winning went from 10.8% to 22.73%, a massive move. The other one was Hawthorn. They went from $15 into $6.80 after their win against the Dogs. Sydney, there was a slight drop, not massive, $4 into $3.20. And Brisbane, $9 into $8.20. So maybe punters have a few concerns. Maybe they could have put Carlton away a little bit more. I know they were up by 60 points, but obviously Carlton clawed back a little bit there. GWS, $6 out to $7.60. And the big blowout, the biggest of all the other teams, was Port Adelaide, $5.50 out to $18. Their probability dropped from 18% to 5.56% chance of winning the Premiership, Joel. But keen to know what your rated prices are now for the AFL Premiership.
Yeah, so I'll run through my prices. So I've got the Swans at $3.10. So throughout the season, I've usually been a bit longer on the Swans than market. Now I've just come across the other side. They've got across the toughest leg in my view. So I've got them at $3.10. I've got Geelong still at $5, and so that's a bit longer than current market. So they're a lay for me, and that's because I actually have them going in as underdog in a prelim final or even money, and I think they'll be underdog in a grand final as well. So I can't have them as short as market has them at the moment. Brisbane and GWS are both even at sevens. Hawthorn $8.50, so a little bit longer than market there. For me at the moment, the Hawks still without Day and Frost now going out as well. They've shown to be one man out, another man in, but at what point does it start to take its toll? And Port Adelaide at $13.50. So, and that all comes back to my market is a little bit different than the current market in that semi-final.
Where do you want to be putting your money?
Look, right now, Brisbane, I think they're trading at 8.20. Looks a good bet for me. Geelong for me is a lay. Look, you could lay Hawthorn as well at $6.60 at the moment. So I just think they've got a little bit too much to do, as excited as everybody is.
Yep, right. And at this point of the season, is the Premiership market one that you're still trading in and out of?
Yeah, it is. It is. And even throughout the week in the Premiership market on Betfair, you can really find fluctuations throughout the week. So it's something that I still trade every week, and our turnover continues to rise as the season goes on, and that'll probably go all the way through to grand final day. So, we've got our rated prices there, and if there's value on either side, we'll usually be taking some of it.
Awesome, Joel. Well, let's get to the first game. There's only two games, obviously, this week, two semi-finals. The first is Port Adelaide and Hawthorn. Currently, plenty of money matched in the market already, $52,000. Port Adelaide to wins $2.46 and Hawthorn's $1.67. A little bit surprising considering that that's a home game for Port Adelaide. Punters just don't want to go near them at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, rightly so. After the weekend, people it's turned off by Port's finals performances. That being said, I always find that there is an overreaction based on one game of footy. Traditionally, teams do bounce back in this scenario. I saw a statistic during the week where 11 qualifying finals teams had lost by over 50 points before Port Adelaide. All 11 of those went on to win the semi-final. So that's a really interesting statistic. Port Adelaide will be the 12th if they can get over the line. Look, for me, Hawthorn now look really undersized down back. Port Adelaide can expose them that way. That being said, Hawthorn will rely on their speed to bounce back out of the back line and, really just beat Port on the ground. Look, this game is a game where, Hawthorn, with their speed should be able to hurt Port on the counter. And again, I think it just shows as well how important contest is going to be in this game. So Port failed miserably around the footy against the Cats when they should have probably, although the favourite going into that. Hawthorn now are a tougher matchup around the contest, and that's where this one's going to be won or lost. At home, I've got Port Adelaide shorter than market. Port Adelaide, I have at $2.10. Current market's $2.46-ish. So, yeah, I think it's an overreaction, and that's not uncommon, in situations like this from the market.
Port Adelaide obviously beat Hawthorn by 1 point in their only meeting of the year. They were down by 41 points and came back a massive last quarter for Port Adelaide. But I think a couple of the big ones is, for me, I'm a little bit worried about how Port's defence is going to stop the mosquito fleet of Nick Watson, Jack Ginnivan, and obviously the veteran Luke Bruce is just such an incredible player, so clinical. And when he gets his chance, he rarely fails. How are Port going to manage those small forwards?
Yeah, look, I think it is their biggest challenge. They will need to rely on guys like, Darcy Byrne-Jones and guys that have played in other positions. Do they bring in a Sin this week, a Jack Sin who can play a defensive role? Because, they've lost their two half-backs in Houston and Kane Farrell, who are extremely important for them and provide the offense. Are they in reality going to be able to replace that, or do they just focus on really, playing on this mosquito fleet? And what they can't allow is what they allowed against the Cats, and that's for them to get out the back. So I'm not sure if they play a little bit off their opponent, so they avoid the speed behind them, getting them. But it's clearly the biggest concern for the Power, and I think again that's why Port need to win the contest, because they need Hawthorn to have as little time in forward half as possible.
It'll be interesting to see Jack Ginnivan line up. He needs to deliver a very strong performance given his recent comments about saying he'll meet the Sydney team in 14 days' time or whatever it was. So that's going to add another bit of spice. But let's look at a couple of betting strategies for the game. So any bets? I mean, obviously you love betting into the disposal markets at Betfair. You find some great trading opportunities and greater odds highlights there. But any betting strategies you're going to be having in that one?
Look, so as I alluded to, I like the Power. I think their value in this matchup. In terms of disposals, look, an obvious one for me is Willem Drew going to Newcombe. So Newcombe, I think, will have a much tougher day than he did against the Dogs, who are happy to go head to head. So Newcombe's going to have a little bit higher disposal line this week, just with his hot form line, and I think he'll have a tougher night against the Power, who are typically really difficult for opposition disposals against, and then he's going to have the tag on top of that. So, Newcombe unders is a play there, and I think also we'll see James Sicily get a bit of attention there as well. So, if you can get the right number, around that 21 and a half, I'd be thinking about unders there as well. So there's a couple I'll be looking for listeners.
Absolutely spot on, Joel. I've got Jai Newcombe's form at the moment is absolutely outstanding. He's averaging 31 touches in his last 5 matches, 26 in his last 10 matches. But he's going to be very short for that 25 plus disposals mark. And some corporates have him as short as $1.47. So I think at that price, he's a lay. I think Willem Drew is definitely going to go to him, as you said. And he's only averaged 21 touches in his last 5 games at Adelaide Oval. And it's funny because he's actually played 3 times there this year and only managed 26 disposals in one of those games. So it's not quite his venue either. That's definitely a lay opportunity. He's going to be very short there. So I completely agree with you. Another one for me is Ollie Wines. Now, he's averaged 25 disposals in his last 5 matches at the Adelaide Oval. Sorry, in his last 5 matches, and then 28 in his last 5 matches at Adelaide Oval. He only had 23 touches against Geelong, but he looks like a player that could drift in that market and potentially be some back value. So anything above $1.60 plus, I'd be happy to back him currently. And, at the Corps, you're currently getting around $1.80. So I assume that potentially there might be a price where you're getting almost $1.90, $2 on Betfair.
I agree with that. And to add another layer to that angle, you've got Butters, who is a bit sore. So does he play a little bit more forward of the footy. So I think they will lean on Wines a lot, and I like to play there too, Carl.
The final one from me is Mitch Georgiades. He's obviously in ripping form, also at Adelaide Oval, averaging just around 3.2 goals per game in his last five. I'd be backing him at 2+ goals, 3+ goals in the Betfair markets. I think you're going to get the best odds there. He only had one goal against Geelong, which should make his odds give him a little bit of value this week and make his odds drift slightly. I've got one bookmaker that has him as short as 265. So if you're getting $3 on Betfair, yeah, I definitely think there's some value there too.
Yep, agreed. Agreed.
Let's go to the GWS and Lions game. We'll preview that one. Keen to know straight off the top, do you think GWS are going to bounce back from that disastrous loss to Swans, where, like you said, they were commanding, they were the commanding team for 3/4 of that game?
Look, two great sides here. Wouldn't be disappointed if these were the two we were looking at on grand final day, to be fair. I think GWS played nearly perfect and didn't get it done against the Swans. I'm concerned for them against the Lions here, because the Lions are just a bit stronger up front. I thought where GWS really got on top was their defence. Buckley was fantastic. Taylor was fantastic. This Lions forward line is going to prove more problems. The market has GWS as 5-point favourites here. I can't have them there. So I've got it near even money, GWS 1.5. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Lions get this done. I think if the Lions can get this done, they could well go all the way. So a really great contest and one I'm looking forward to. What's going to be particularly interesting about this one is the midfield battle again. Bedford's been announced okay to play. So it looks like he'll be in and go to Lachie Neale, which is going to be important. But, my view is there's enough quality now for the Lions to fill that void. Will Ashcroft's been enormous for them. And I think he will be something that they probably missed last final series. And then, the injections of guys like of Zach Bailey and Cam Rayner are fantastic as well.
Such a young player, Ashcroft, but it's crazy how important he's become for that Lions side. Obviously, coming off an ACL, yeah, he's a fantastic player. I can't wait to see what he's made of in the future. He could potentially take over Lachie Neale next year as that Brownlow contender for the Brisbane Lions. But GWS has beaten Brisbane twice this year from both of their meetings. Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely cracking game. I just want to ask you, Joel, do you look into or buy into any of the chatter around Brisbane's accuracy at goal? Obviously, it's not great. It's actually the worst almost in the competition at 37.3% shot accuracy. Do you think that will come into play at all?
I do buy into it because it's real, right? So we all know how good Brisbane can be, and sometimes it's literally Brisbane who beat Brisbane. And that's what, for me, sometimes presents this value in the market for Brisbane, because they're not as high on the ladder as they should be, or they didn't win by as much as they should have, or they lost when they should have won. And for me, accuracy is something that should always normalize over time. What we've seen with the Lions is it just hasn't normalized as fast as we'd expect it to. I always bet on situations like this where I expect it to normalize. So, it's probably hurt me a little bit in the past, but, I do expect the Lions to get on top of this at some point. It's a mental game, but, it's very real. And I guess to answer your question, it's something that, you have to take into account. It can also present opportunity.
There were a couple of moments in their game against Carlton where Carlton were kind of surging in that third quarter, and Brisbane missed a couple of really easy chances at goal. One was a set shot, and one was that one in the square where the ball sort of overrun that play there. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one, and we're hoping for your sake, if you're backing Brisbane, that they're not going to be their worst enemy. So it's not so much money match in that market just yet, almost $20,000, but GWS is $1.79 on Betfair, and Brisbane is $2.26 to back. Just want to summarize your betting strategies again.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't mind playing the line in this game. I think it could be tight. And I'd be playing Brisbane. Brisbane
Yep.
plus 4.5, plus 5.5 at a price. Yep.
Perfect, Joel. Well, they're the two games that we're going to look at this week, the semi-finals clashes. But now we're also going to look at the Brownlow medal, and it's just been an absolutely tremendous season to be trading the Brownlow medal. So many amazing moves. I mean, a couple of stats that I've got is uh, there's been so many players to trade under $10, including Caleb Sarong, Zach Merritt, Tom Green, Matt Rowell. Even those players have drifted significantly in the market, but just goes to show that if you can make some solid predictions, that there's some really good opportunities to trade. But I want to talk about the Brownlow market. I want to talk about who you've got potentially winning the medal, but we're going to talk about post round 24, some of the odds fluctuations, and the biggest one was Nick Dacos. His odds dropped from $4.30 on the Betfair exchange into $2.70. It increased his chances from a 23% chance of winning the Brownlow to a 36% chance of winning. Patrick Cripps only had a slight drop. It'd be interesting to see whether you think he gets votes in that final round against St Kilda. He was instrumental in that third quarter. Absolutely amazing. Maybe one of his best quarters of the year. He dropped from $2.58 to $2.48, 38% to a 40% probability of winning the Brownlow. The other one is Lockie Neal, a slight drop, but I think he's kind of going to sustain that price, 960 to 840. And Errol Goulden was a massive drifter before round 24, but he played quite well and went from $95 to $60. He's now drifted out again there. But let's talk about your pick for the Brownlow medal. Who do you think is going to win?
Yeah, so I've got Patrick Cripps getting out on top. So, him and Nick Dacos, obviously, and they're even money with each other now, 260 and 270. So, for me, I couldn't have Dacos at the current quote. Market on the Betfair exchange doesn't look too far off for mine. I mean, my top five are Cripps, Dacos, Neil, Bontempelli, and Heaney, who's obviously ineligible. So it looks okay. If you thought Neil was a fantastic bowler and you're prepared to take some of him, you can get $9.40, which looks okay. But clearly the top two, which that's what everybody's talking about, Cripps versus Dacos. I'm with Patrick Cripps.
Errol Goulden was a bit of a roughie last year, which stormed home and really shocked a couple of punters out there. Certainly shocked me how many votes he received in the second half of the year. But do you think we're going to have another situation like that with a player?
I mean, quite possibly. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it year after year now. We saw there's been Ollie Wines, Matt Priddis. Plenty of guys have come up, popped up, and won the Brownlow, and I think it's become a great point of contention in how it's voted for. And the reality is it is just the opinion of the umpires there. So look, anything can happen. That being said, this particular year it feels, and my votes have the top two a little bit ahead. So I think it might be one of those two that gets it this year. It might be a bridge too far for somebody to storm home and close the gap.
100%. Well, the Betfair's Brownlow predictor currently has Nick Dacos winning by 1.5 votes, and then second to Patrick Cripps. Patrick Cripps is second in there with 30.5 votes. Lockie Neal, Isaac Heaney would be fourth, but obviously he's ineligible. And then Caleb Sarong, Errol Goulden, so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's going to be a cracking finish to the year, and what was a fantastic year of trading in the Brownlow medal. I'm keen to have a look at my book and just discuss some of the positions I'm in and get some advice on you about how potentially you would be looking to trade on the night. But currently just having a look at the top of the market. Apologies, just getting the market up in front of me. I've got Patrick Cripps to profit $477 if he wins. I've actually laid off recently Nick Dacos purely because I'm I'm with Patrick Cripps if I have to 50-50 them. I've now going to lose $197 if Nick Dacos wins. I've never been with Lachie Neale this year, so I lose $876 if he wins. I can see him drifting in the first 6 or 7 rounds of the year. And then if he does drift, I could potentially bet in play there just to reduce my liability there. And then I've got winning positions on Marcus Bontempelli, $931, Caleb Sarong, $500, Zach Merritt, $200. And my best position actually is Errol Goulden, $3,295, which I did want to lay off there. I'd predicted that he'd shorten a little bit more than what he did, but the umpires and the Betfair punters didn't quite see him getting votes in some of the games where I think he potentially was. So I'll be looking for him to shorten on Brownlow night and potentially, lay off there. But thoughts on the current green position on Patrick Cripps and then the red positions on Nick Dacos and Lachie Neale?
No, I think it's a really exciting book. You've got Profit on, who I have as the winner as well. Agree, like I'd be laying Dacos at the current quote. So that being a small red is okay with me. And, you've got green spots on some guys that, let's not discount Bontempelli. I mean, he can poll really, really well. He won all the awards from the Players Association. And he could find himself right at the top. And then, for me, Errol Goulden, I just wonder if the Swans, lackluster back end of the year could hurt all of them. Do you know what I mean? Especially when everybody's just expected such a high standard. I just find that when players and teams set expectations for themselves, when they don't perform at that level, they sometimes struggle to get votes at all, and that could hurt the Swans.
Yep. Will you be betting into the top 3, top 5, top 10, some of those other Brownlow markets? How do you attack Brownlow night?
Look, typically in past years, because I watch every game live, I do my own votes, and I didn't do that this year. So I've had to go back in retrospect a little bit, and so I'll be being a little bit more cautious, and it'll only be for me if real value presents itself throughout the count. I have found betting throughout the count as a profitable strategy, and one that if you've got your round by round voting, you can start to put some things together as the count proceeds through the night. So something I'll be watching.
And final one for you is we're certain to have the conversation start up again about umpires giving votes in these games. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What do you think?
Look, I'm okay with it. I'm a traditionalist, so I like how it's always been. Let's not change everything. We're changing the rules every 5 minutes. Let's not change how we do the votes in our medals. If you're not happy with how this medal is voted for, maybe we do a night on one of the other awards, because, hey, there's plenty of other awards that are voted differently. So the Brownlow medal is the umpire's choice. And if we don't like it, I don't think we should change it, put it that way.
Love that answer, because it was a question without notice, and I completely agree. I think people forget that it is an umpire's award. That's the whole point. The Brownlow medal is about the umpires giving those votes. It's not a coach's award. It's not a player's award. There are those, but I don't think we should change it. I actually really love it. It makes for a very entertaining night. And I think people kind of sook up a little bit, but I think we should embrace the wonder of the umpires voting for it, because, the fact of the matter is that it brings that ambiguity of who's going to win and those surprises, which make the night really special. Even better, it actually can create some great trading opportunities as well on the night. Now, obviously, that we can bet, in play on the Brownlow medal. So, yep, I agree with you there, Joel. And I actually agree with you for most of the things we've spoken about today. I'm really looking forward to the second week of finals. But is there anything you're looking forward to, particularly at any game, watching any player?
Yeah, look, really looking forward to how Port Adelaide responds. to be fair. That's the first one on the weekend. And, typically the Power have responded pretty well when Ken Hinckley's been really questioned. And I can tell you again, he's being questioned again here in Adelaide. If they go out in straight sets, it's a certain departure for Ken at the Power. And look, I think the players should be really embarrassed over last week. So I'm really eager to see how they come out and perform against the hottest side in the comp. There's no tougher challenge in football right now than the Hawks. So I'm really eager to see how Port Adelaide respond. And then, the Giants and the Lions, I think it's just going to be such a tough contest. I think we're going to see a game where there's going to be lead changes. I think it's going to be really hard, really difficult in the contest. Both teams trying to nullify the other's strengths. And I just think it's going to be a grind up there at NG. And it might just be whoever's leading when that final siren goes. So really looking forward to that one. As I said before, I feel like the winner that comes out of that gets the Cats in a prelim and might find themselves in a grand final. So it's an exciting weekend for semi-final weekend.
I want to see Jack Ginnivan come out against Port Adelaide. I just want to see fire. That's it. I'm looking for a spicy contest. I'm looking for it to be aggressive. We don't want Port to be toothless again. Pardon the pun. I'm looking forward to a really spicy contest there, and I think Port should take offence to Jack Ginnivan's comments. I certainly don't think that they're out of it, but you're right. There is that weighted pressure for Ken Hinckley, because I think you're right. If Port go out in straight sets here, especially a bad loss, I don't think he's going to be coaching at Port Adelaide next year. It's a really weird one, that one, because they continue to win, but question marks about his coaching future always come up. But I'm looking forward to a massive weekend of finals footy. Let's do this again next week, Joel. We'll recap the games, and then we'll also look forward to the preliminary final games. But looking forward to it all. Thank you so much. That's all we've got time for on this edition of Trade Talk Finals Edition. Good luck on the punt, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck, everybody.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.